Okay. Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny. I'm happy to be back here in Paris at Android Makers. The last time I gave a talk, I think it was also in this room, I gave a live coding session, and I remember that during this live coding, a key fell off the keyboard, like of my Mac. You know, this was the Macs that were very broken. So I thought, this time when I come back, there will be not a single code on the slide. When I realized this is the first time in, 15 years of doing public talks, public speeches, I never had a talk without any code. So I'm nervous again. So let's see, I hope you like this. The idea of this talk started basically shortly after the last Android Makers, that it was 2019, I started SoundCloud. I hope there's no correlation here, because I want to stay there a little bit longer. So it's 4 years. And when I started there, the setup that we had for the teams, or the way that we went, was pretty much what everybody did in the industry. Like these cross-functional feature teams I want to talk about. We just started building it up. And then recently, we went completely in a different direction. We basically went like 5 years back. And I want to tell you a bit why. I don't want to say with this talk that feature teams don't work. But I want to give you some hints where maybe you're not ready to adopt them yet, or where I think, from our experience, we had a bit problems with them. So let's start with, where does the whole idea of like these feature teams come from, right? Let's go back to the Agile Manifesto. This is where the whole thing starts, right? If you do Kanban, Scrum, whatever, it all goes back to this. So let's read a bit together. It was all about individuals and interactions over some weird processes. It's about building working software and not write some documentation. Customer collaboration, so be as close as, to your customer as possible, right? Over some contract negotiations. And responding to change, one of the key factors, right? We want to be able to iterate fast. We want to have fast feedback loops. So let's keep this in mind. And a lot of the things that we do nowadays goes all back to this. So when we talk about feature teams, I looked up Wikipedia, and it told me a cross-functional feature team is basically a group of people with different functional expertise that work towards a common goal. The way we see it in Android or in mobile, most of the time means that we're working together with like backend engineers, right? Android, iOS, we all work together for this common goal, and we have everything that we need to succeed. This is the way most of us interpret the sentence in tech. And when I give this talk and I research a bit more about the whole topic, also understand what did we do wrong. I found this, and you probably remember this, in 2014, there was a couple of blog posts and videos from Spotify. They explained us how they work. And a lot of how most of us work nowadays goes back to these principles. So I found a blog post here talking about the Spotify Agile model. Never heard this term, but I remember reading about these blog posts and how they set up their teams. What was their idea? They said like, traditionally you have this. You have a team that is like highly aligned because someone tells you the goal, and you tell the team, wait, give me a second. This is what we want. Sorry, I stepped on. So you have a highly aligned team, so someone tells you what to do, but the team itself has low autonomy. You basically tell them, we need to cross the river, build this bridge. This is the classic way of software engineering, right? It's like top-down. And then what Spotify said, give the teams a bit more autonomy. Let them figure out the solution, right? This is the whole idea, like, this is why they need everything that in this team to be able to succeed. So if it's a designer, if it's a backend developer, right, put everything in there. And this was the principle behind it. So you have these high autonomous teams. And we adopted as a SoundCloud. And I was lucky the first 2 years I was working in a team called the Growth team. And we were this perfect team. We had this perfect setup. We had an engineering manager. We had a product owner. We had a designer. We had a data scientist on our team. And we had 2 engineers per platform, 2 Android, 2 iOS, 2 backend. We did have front-end in the team, but we didn't need it. So I was very lucky because we literally had everything by the book that we need to succeed. And we built some cool stuff. But more and more I figured out that the reality in the teams looked like this. We have one Android. We have no Android. Oh, we don't have any mobile engineers at all. there was always something missing. And this was, it led us to the feeling that, we have this setup, but constantly, some of the teams are always understaffed. Although we rearrange things, and that led to simple things like developers saying, I please want to pair with someone. And I remember when I started SoundCloud, I spent the first 2 weeks just pairing with Android engineers on different things. And let's say for the next 2 years, this was the last time I paired with someone from the Android team on anything. There was the only Android developer in my team I could pair with. This was very sad. So, and Spotify, in the original blog post on video series, they acknowledge this, that Android engineers, for example, they need to collaborate with each other, not only with their expertise that they work on. And so they had the idea of tribes and chapters. Of course, we had the same. We had something that's called the Android Collective. So as an Android team, we met like every week and like call. I mean, nowadays virtual, back then in a room. We would talk about what's new in Android, what are we working on, to like have these conversations, right? And not only talk to backend and iOS developers. Although I love pairing with my iOS developers. We had that retrospective, but over the time, the attendance got lower and lower because it's an additional retrospective. You have 2-year team retrospective. And then we realized it's super hard to schedule any meetings where everybody could join because you are talking basically to 6 different teams and need to find a spot for all of them. Code reviews became really hard because you hear about what they're working on once a week in a 1-hour meeting. And it was still very hard to pair for people. So setting up a pairing session or something was impossible. In general, you could question the idea of like pull requests a lot. Alan Hub was like super against them. They say they're very harmful. It's like the worst kind of code review you can have because it's basically after your work is done. We still do them, but it's much harder if you don't have context, right? So just to remind us, it's like the worst way of writing code. So one thing that we wanted, that whole idea of agile, is to breaking down silos. We don't want a QA department that gets thrown up a product over the fence. Here, test it now. We worked on this for the last year. But with creating these feature teams, we realized we are creating a lot of new silos. So each team, because they have this high autonomy, they can build their own thing, right? And I saw this at other companies when I was at Groupon. I remember for a while they had this mode where all these schemes can work at like a little startup. They could choose whatever technology they want. Netflix works like this, by the way. And then later I talked to an engineering manager and he said, yeah, we had a restructuring and now we own these Scala services. No one here knows how to run Scala, so it can lead to problem in the long term. And there's this thing called Conway's law, which you will find very quickly when you move to these feature teams. It basically says that in your code base, if it's large enough, you will find the communication structure, which just basically means the team structure of your teams. And if the code base lives long enough, and SoundCloud has 15 years behind it in the Android app, you will find basically all structures you ever had in your team, in your company, in your code. Because they all did their own thing and they have their own boundaries. It's very interesting. And there's a way how to fight this. But it's a thing to notice. And with this new silos that we're creating, there was an interesting question. Like, actually, who works on the bigger problem now? Because we all have our own thing, right? So this thing that we own. And going back to the Spotify video, they had this in the original video. They said, be careful, do not end up there. Oh, I hope someone is working at this bridge problem, or this river problem. Everybody has their own thing and doing their thing and their technology. But are we going in the right direction? I thought it's a very interesting question. And this brings down to what is your KPIs, you look at the team to, right? And I lately found like an interesting blog post that I'll show you in a second. I came up with this term for it. It's called the trickle-down KPIs. That's what I experienced. So the team, your C-level, gives out goals for the company. And then all these feature teams figure out, okay, what can we do in the search screen to reach this goal? So they all build their little thing and hope this sums up. And to be honest, like the trickle-down economy, this doesn't work. It will not sum up. And this blog post that I just mentioned, I found it very interesting. It came out 2 weeks ago, so right in time for this presentation. It was from someone who worked at Facebook, and then he moved to Instagram, and he realized, oh my God, everything is so much better here in the way they work. And at some point, Instagram became Facebook in the way of working, and now he left them, and we look back and think, what was the things that I liked? What are the things that we broke? And he said this thing, and it's very in line with what I just said. You know, these companies come up with these very important numbers, and they're somehow loosely mapped to the business goal. And if you move the needle in the right direction, you ship a better product. This sounds completely ridiculous, but most of the big companies are exactly working like this. And if you look at the Amazon app on Android, any of them, they're all shit. But the numbers prove they are the best apps ever, right? So be careful that you not fall into this trap of these very important numbers, and you're getting promotion if you push this to the needle. Think about the Agile Manifest. The customer is what we should aim for. And there's another KPI that we completely forget. Take KPIs. Crashes, ANRs, all the things that we as developers are interested in. Who looks at those? So when I took over the Android platform role last year, I was not sure if I wanted to take the role. So I asked for someone who had this role before, and he said, yeah, the role is a bit tough, because you don't really have your own platform team, right? You're basically a technical dev PM, and I would extend, I would have become technical dev PM without a team. The one begging all the feature teams, I need your developer for the next week, or for a day per week, because we really need to fix the bigger thing. It's not tied to the KPIs, and it's something outside their scope. So it became a problem. So, and I found it really interesting that lately our CPO, who joined, I think 1.5 years ago, said this to our developers. Speed and performance, so how fast an app loads, and how little it crashes, are the most important considerations for any product. To be honest, the first time someone from the product team, I heard someone saying like this. And I really, really appreciated that they see this. So it's not about being beautiful. A laggy and slow app is not beautiful, is what Ward said. And I really go with this. So in this feature team model, how do you handle KPIs, right? Of course, there's a solution. And Spotify mentioned that. So you create what they had, the client app squads. So you have all your little feature squads, and then there's one team that actually checks the core KPIs, looks at crashes, build maybe some internal frameworks. And you probably need one also to look at your infrastructure, right? So there's another team that you built. See how we adapted this model to be able to, the team became a bit larger, and we just wanted to go with the scale, right? So let's break it down. And I mentioned this earlier, all these teams were constantly understaffed. Oh, we need to create new teams now, just to be able to make this model work. So we created a core team, obviously. It was our client squad. And what's the idea of the core team? It's basically to restrict the autonomy of these feature teams a bit by giving them frameworks and making sure they're not going too crazy, right? Very often, this is how it's interpreted. But to be honest, it's actually the tech dev team. All these feature teams constantly build things, and then they move to the next thing, and the core team is the ones having to fix this. This is what I experienced. It can be worse if you have feature teams who don't have ownership at all. You just randomly spawn them up and leave them. Then no one cares anymore about this. But still, I think the core team became a bit like the tech dev team. So we realized of all these things, did we do something wrong? Especially looking backward from where we are now. And we clearly must have been done something wrong. So I looked a bit around and I found this article. Harvard Business Review wrote this article and said that 75% of our cross-functional teams actually dysfunctional in some kind of way. Found it very interesting. So it's not only us. So the idea is good, but somehow people struggle. And when you start looking into this topic a bit more and how it started together with something else that is very, very tied to each other. It started with another kind of blog post, but it was a certain amount of time, but it's the same time frame. It was the rise of microservices. So Netflix in 2013 wrote a blog post how they work. And when microservices start or not, you can discuss. But this is in general the time frame. And they explained how they have all these teams and they all work on their own thing. And microservices, this was the cool shit, right? Nowadays, there's a lot of conferences and blog posts about, do we really need a microservices? Wait. Maybe a monolith isn't as bad. No one says microservices is a bad thing, but I think we went over the edge a bit with it. What was the idea of microservices? Independent deliverables. Every team should just ship whatever they want, right? Similar to why we had these feature teams, although we had like one app that we worked on. We ended up with increased complexity and a lot of small boxes all around. There's often like black boxes. And when you read a lot of these blog posts nowadays, are you actually big enough that you need microservices? Is what I will tell you. So it's a bit about scale. Which brings up, there's also a quote here, don't choose an architecture pattern just because it works for someone else. And I would highlight, especially if it's for Netflix, Google, Amazon, Spotify, add whoever you want there, they have very specific problems. They have a scale that you probably won't have. So I tried to figure out for this talk how many Android developers Spotify has. It was very interesting that I got very different numbers. The one that sounded realistic is around 200 Android, but someone from internally also said 600. It's like crazy, like, even if I knew it's like more than 100, just Android engineers working on this one app. Of course, it's a very specific problem that most of us don't have, that you need to split up your teams in a way of they working. And similar to the other ones, I worked in a company and someone from Facebook joined, and then it was, we have to have a mono repo. Mono repo is the thing, it will solve all the problems. And the company trusted them, everybody went mono repo, everything went completely, build times went over the roof, because they realized if Facebook want to have better build times, they hired 20 more engineers to fix the builds. Our company wanted to save money. That didn't work. And this is what often, like, hey, it works for Amazon, it must be good, right? So I keep in mind. And these cross-functional feature teams, when I asked Google Bart about it, it says it came from the book Large Scale Scrum. I mean, don't trust Google Bart in like these facts, but I found it very interesting, yes. But large scale Scrum, this sounds like Scrum on all of this. This was not a skill we're having. We had like less than 10 Android developers when we tried to adopt this model. So what happened? We went back to platform teams. How does it look like? We are back, one code ownership, pretty old way how a startup would do it. We're like roughly 10 Android developers. We can do constant mobbing and pairing on demand. Oh, we have this problem. Okay, let's do a pairing session later too. Bam, we join. If there's really the need for something along with the project, we can spawn up feature team. We did it for the feed that you might have heard that we're currently rolling out. But usually we try to avoid it. Everybody can grab tickets. So what about these silos, right? Are we creating new silos? I'd say we broke down more silos than created, because now we created like 4 silos, backend, frontend, Android, iOS. We never had like a QA department destroying over the fence thing, we never had it. One thing that we learned that we're not doing anymore is no large screen upfront ticket. So the product will not write this huge ticket that we at some point will pick up. It's a small thing, some ideas, and then we pick it up together with design and product. We will define it like we would use in a team, right? Okay, what about this case? What about this case? So this part that we would do in the feature teams, we are still doing it. But the moment the team grabs the ticket. And running back to this Wikipedia definition of a cross-functional feature team, I found this. This may include people from finance, marketing, operations, and HR. Wait, this is not about just different kind of developers. So this is something that we basically adopted. We have no regular syncs, and we are trying to find a cadence where designers, engineers, product owners, who engineering product design, we call it EPD, but also people from marketing are on the call. For years, they had no idea what we are doing in Berlin. They're sitting in New York. And we had no idea why they never market anything of we're building, because we never talked to each other. There were too many layers in between. Now they're seeing what will pick up next. They can define, so we're prioritizing together. When the work started, they're out. But they're on this call, and they're constantly knowing, and actually now we're working together, and they market like things, and their newsletters in the app and all these things. It works super well. And we continuously can be able to reprioritize work together. And we're trying to make sure that everybody knows what the team is working on, so we send like company-wide newsletters, for example, from the Android team. So more important than having like a certain setup, I'd say, have a shared vision that everybody is aligned towards. And this is what we're creating by trying to talk to everyone. And we kept a lot of things that Spotify introduced, like feature toggles. I mean, we still have release trains. And we constantly ship things. At some point, we turn on the toggle, right? So, no, we shouldn't give up on those. But we don't need feature teams to have this. In the end, have people who care. I think that's much more important than hiring 30 more developers. Have the right 8, I don't know what's the number. I have the feeling, like, from my experience, there's 1 to 3, which is a great team, then everything to 10, and then probably, I don't know, 30 above. In between, there's no difference. If you add 2 more to the project, it will not make a difference. So better make sure you hire the right people and keep them. So if something works for Google, Facebook, and Spotify, probably you're not going to need it. It can be microservices, can be Bazel instead of Gradle, monorepos. Modularization. How many of us have created thousands of modules and just spread our modules, make like a mess, plus a distributed mess? Like people do microservices. Do we really need all of those? And maybe you don't need cross-functional feature teams, unless you reach a certain scale where you really need to change this. So let's think about the Agile Manifesto. These are the things. Let's respond to change, customer collaboration, and actually working software. And let's ship shit. This is the end so far. And we actually, if you know someone, we are hiring a mobile QA. First time in 15 years that we're hiring a QA for our team. You can talk to me afterwards why. I think it now fits the setup that we're having. Yeah, and I hope there's something you can take out of here. Thank you.